Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Davina Shafet, singer-songwriter, former fashion designer, but most of all, painter. Today, we are geeking out on art history, of course, one of my favorite things in the world. And I thought, something that I could help you with is understanding abstract art, because very few people do understand abstract art. Paris, 1833, Théophile Gautier writes an essay about art where he states l'art pour l'art, meaning that art should not be reduced to serving the state or the church or just being used for anything else than for what it is. Art should not have a purpose, it should not serve as a propaganda tool, it should not imitate nature, it should not be a representation of reality, art should not contain a message, art should just be celebrated for what it is, art. So we are entering from that moment on a phase in art history which is going to be way later on, the whole 20th century, with modern art, where artists will distance themselves from the older functions of art to focus on l'art pour l'art. Of course, this also coincides with huge advancements in science and the Industrial Revolution and the invention of photography. So representing reality isn't as interesting because you have photography being able to do that. So that was what spiked on the Impressionism. So we have Cézanne, the Fauviste with Matisse that will use highly saturated color and that will start to reduce reality to shapes, patterned shapes. Well, they will play around with perspective, scale. It's more about the expression of reality than it is about showing reality as it actually is. So from the Fauve, from Cézanne, from Matisse, there will be, of course, a response with the Cubists. So, for example, Braque, Picasso, the Cubist response, the synthétisme, analytique. They will show different angles of one object at the same time on the same painting. No notions of space, time in those paintings. So it's like looking at the same object from different perspectives. So basically it's about perception and stripping down an object. The synthèse of it, its essence. And to the Cubists, we will now have abstract artists, painters mostly to begin with. And those will strip reality even further and they will only keep shapes and space. So this is kind of the chronological way of thought, how we arrived to the beginning of abstract art. It's also the beginning of psychoanalysis and a new spiritual awakening. New thoughts are happening in the world at this time. Artists, philosophers are questioning the world, reality, and this will very much so inspire modern art especially, and abstract art begins now.
It all started in 1875 when Helena Povatsky co-founded the Theosophical Society. It was a synthesis of science, religion, and philosophy, and that is when art became spiritual. She proclaimed that this religion was an ancient wisdom. Readers and followers of this movement, Count Kandinsky and first abstract painter Hilma af Klint. Coincidence? I think not. Now that art isn't serving religion itself or the state, could art be the religion in itself? Well, not so fast. Helena af Klint proclaimed to be in contact with spirits and that those spirits would tell her what to paint. So her abstract paintings were like messages, secret symbols, magical manifestations that she had to paint because, as she called them, the high masters. asked her to. And for 23,000 of pages of notes, she wrote down what the masters told her. She would conduct those seances where she would be calling on the great masters to tell her what to paint next. Those paintings were filled up with philosophical messages that needed to be uncovered. Hilma af Klint could have been totally mad. Maybe, most probably. She was really convinced that what she was doing, that her art wasn't art. She was just doing what she was told to do, because there was some type of message in those paintings that could actually change the world. A spiritual awakening of some sort, a message that could save everyone. Herself? Who knows? And now enters Vladimir Kandinsky, god of abstraction. Another Russian, remember Helena? He was a follower of hers as well. He believed that abstract art contained all of nature and more, the sensitivity of the artist. It is him, Vladimir Kandinsky, who made abstract art famous. And he thought that it was the colors that would connect you to the spiritual and not the other way around. Color itself was the link to that other world. In fact, he was a Steiner's follower. And in Steiner's education, the subject was how to know higher worlds. So in fact, art was more than nature. And he believed that primitive art was the real art, as it was like music, just a moment of spirituality. Kandinsky's relationship with color was sparked when he saw the Impressionists. This is nothing more than color, yet it resonates like music. It has a rhythm and emotion. And so he started organizing his paintings like music. He would have a type of code. The black arch, as he called it, was a recurring theme. The composition of the painting, the movement of the painting, was constructed like music, with repetitive gestures, repetitive movements, patterns that then stopped into something surprising. But its main goal was to create a sensory experience. And so he plays. He plays with colors like I play the piano. I mean, some colors can be out of key, and he plays around with dissonance. And he creates this theory about color, trying his best to not represent anything. Yet, the titles of the paintings make it quite clear what you are looking at, and it is very simple. The Black Arch. It is what you are supposed to follow. Look at the painting, follow the rhythm, look at it and try and have a synesthetic experience. Another big colorist, Sonia Dali, who in 1914 focused all of her work on the latest scientific research about color. See, it is at that moment of time that the whole idea of complementary colors and the cercle chromatique began. This was a celebration of light. It is at this moment of time that knights in Paris are given their lamps, and so new colors, vibrating colors, appear in the night. And so she played around, pushing this idea, this notion of dissonance and out of key, but just for color's sake itself. The effect that one color has on the other, the effect they have combined on them and on us. It is all a matter of balance and shades, and this color next to this one creates a new mood. And all of this is like the alterations happening in the cosmos. And her husband, Robert Delaunay, another colorist, wrote in 1912 in his manifesto, "Light, let us attempt to see." So this research of color is really this research of light, this research of the cosmos. So we are not even only on the spiritual now, we are also trying to understand color and the way that we see. Paul Klee another master of color. However, he was inspired by the colors in nature. His art is tonally graded. Tone is different than color. It's an alteration from the vivid color. He's making it lighter, darker, with different degrees of transparency, just like light has an effect on color. And so we see that everything is constantly changing, and everything is affecting another thing, and that everything is only in a relationship to something else. Nothing is anything by itself. What Paul Klee is doing here is giving a proposition of what perception is. We organize what we see. We put things in relationship to other things. We are not without everything around us. And so, just like this color affects this one and the light affects this tone, now Mondrian is the one who really took it a bit further. He creates shapes talking to shapes. He believes that the masculine is vertical, whereas the feminine is horizontal. He believes that all social imbalances will be balanced in a new social shape. He is inspired by philosophical and Hegel's philosophy, stating that every element is determined by its contrary. And so he creates with the rules of tension and contradiction, which are the rules that rule the universe. His big idea is that reality is an illusion, and that abstract art is actually more real than the reality we perceive. Abstract art should be considered under its own set of rules and under its own visual terms. He inspired a lot of architects, but Mondrian despised them. Way too materialistic, not heady enough. See, what he questions with these lines that don't really go to the end of the canvas here is that your eye will finish this line without you even noticing it. This is all of the illusions, all of the perceptions that we create without noticing it. So by disrupting the order, he is actually showing you that you have to look a bit deeper. 1915, Russia, again, Malevich. He's the one who really takes this minimal shape thing to the next level. You've seen this. The black square inside of the white square. He's the guy I'm talking about. He was part of the futurist movement. He then created his own suprematism. And from his teachings in Russia was born constructivism. So let's just go back a bit and talk about this whole black square inside of a bigger white square. For Malevich, shape is feeling. Like in Kandinsky, color is feeling. Well, he's more of a shape guy. From geometrical form, geometrical shapes, he sees the divine and creates these very simple shapes with the tiniest hint to movement to present them as new icons. He exhibits these new signs in a church. As for him, these very simple shapes represent something higher. For Malevich, feeling is set outside of reality. Feeling is its own thing. It is higher and it is outside anything that we know. So the black square is feeling inside of the void, the white square. So this black square, if you actually see it in real life, it is very textured, it has a lot of depth. It's not just a bland, plain black square, which is what we usually think of. So for example, Soulage is a contemporary painter exploring the depth, the light in black. So Malevich's students then create constructivism, where they start using abstract art for graphic design purposes, propaganda purposes, for covers on magazines and things like this, forgetting l'art pour l'art. For them, form, shape is not feeling, it is useful. And this is, of course, very inspired by the Industrial Revolution. For them, art needs to be productive, it needs to serve productivity. Last Russian guy I'm gonna talk about, Rothko.
You've obviously seen his work, very tortured soul, lived in the US. He had led a very isolated life and he did not cope well with success. He was commissioned by the Four Seasons to create paintings, and because, as he said, he didn't want rich pigs eating in front of them, he created paintings that has since been given to the Tate Museum. He actually decided on that just before giving them to the Four Seasons. But these paintings were meant to create this claustrophobic feeling. Rothko's art is really about the feeling that you get in front of color. He uses a lot of glaze. The colors are very glowy. It's said to be a very transcendent experience. All of his works are supposed to only be seen next to each other, and his concept is to really build on monumentalism, simplicity, and stillness. Of course, his art is also very spiritual, and we can see that with the Rothko Chapel, first of all, but also with the use of glaze and some techniques in his work that were inspired from religious paintings. His paintings are really about human tragedy. It's all about feeling, voids, darkness, light. So what can we expect from abstract art today? Hopefully, now that you've understood the history of it and the different ideas behind abstraction, I think you will look at abstract art today, whether it is drawings, paintings, or even sculptures, and remember that it is mostly about defying reality. It is about finding another truth, a spiritual one, and just celebrating art for what it is. So maybe color is only color, and its complexities, of course, tells us about light, change. Color tells us about feeling. Shape and movements and just art in itself holds human tragedy, human sensitivity, nature, and even more, as Kandinsky puts it. So it is something that is to be appreciated for its movement, for its rhythm, for its feeling, and not necessarily for its concept. So abstract art today is quite different across the board, and different abstract artists, of course, have their own research, philosophy. I think we should appreciate abstract art for what it is, art. Because for some reason, the composition in the painting works. It is not just a matter of luck. It is a matter of balance, composition. Remember the colors being out of key, and everything being in a relationship to something. Abstract art strips everything down to its essence, and so abstract art should really be considered under its own visual terms and order. Hope this helps. I'll see you next week. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments below. Bye bye!